My name is Lean Tran Layton, and I'm a practicing immigration attorney in the United States. And I'm an immigrant myself. Throughout my life and career, I've had the privilege of meeting people from all over the world who have immigrated to the United States. And I've heard some amazing stories, and I want you to hear them too. These stories will make you feel a range of emotions, but most of all, I hope you will be left feeling inspired. Welcome to The Immigrant Voice. If you like what you've been hearing on this podcast, share it with others and leave us a comment or review wherever you're listening to it. Also, remember to subscribe so you can hear our upcoming episodes.
So today's guest is from a country that most of us probably don't know too much about. So I'm excited for you to hear where she's from, what brought her here, and the different experiences she's had living in both countries. So welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being on it. So tell us your name and where you're living and how long you've been in the U.S.
So my name is Tracey. I am from Trinidad and Tobago, and I moved to San Antonio, Texas in 2010.
So for those who don't know, if someone was looking at a map of Trinidad and Tobago, where is it located?
So Trinidad and Tobago is in the Caribbean, and it is I would say the last Caribbean island right before Venezuela. So even though we are pretty close to Venezuela, we do not speak Spanish. We're just strictly English-speaking Caribbean people. My accent, most of the Trini accent, the Trini slangs, it's kind of diluted right now. But if I were to talk like that, you would hear probably some aspects of maybe a little hint of what maybe a Jamaican accent might sound like.
What's the ethnic makeup of Trinidad and Tobago?
I would say the majority is Black and Indian, East Indian. Of course, we have a lot of different mixes. So it would be, you can have people with up to 8 different ethnicities in them. Everybody is so mixed. It's a very different place to be when you compare it to here and to, the States. Everybody is just living as one and as mixed as they can be. But I would say the majority is, Black and Indian.
So you said the official language of the country is English, right?
Yeah.
What other languages are spoken there, if any?
Well, they would always have some Spanish because of Venezuela. You would hear a lot of Arabic because we do have quite a bit of Syrian and Lebanese. Basically, we'd probably hear a little bit of Hindi because of the Indian ethnicity.
And what is your ethnicity?
I am half Lebanese, half East Indian. My grandparents came from Lebanon, and I would say, not quite sure what, I think it'd probably be like great grandparents from India.
So it sounds like Trinidad is it's kind of like a melting pot. So similar to the US in that there's just so many different ethnicities. Maybe you can give us a little history, what brought all of those different people to Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, the East Indians, a lot of it was, I think in the very beginning was slavery. Honestly, A lot of the Syrian Lebanese community would be for business. And, a lot of the Asians and the Middle Easterns, they mainly came there for business purposes.
What do you think would surprise Americans about your country?
Even though we are a Caribbean island, tourism is not it's not the thing that we focus on, that we have oil. And that is our main export, is that we have crude oil.
I actually was looking on the internet to just find out a little bit more about Trinidad and Tobago. And that was something I did see. It seems like it's a pretty big oil industry there. And so would you say that it's a country that is like a wealthy country?
It is, but apart from there's a lot of corruption. Let's put it that way. So even though there is a lot of potential and there is a lot of wealth, sometimes it is not. It's not spread out where it should.
So when you said there's corruption, like what are some examples of it that you see?
Like
that you saw?
The government. A lot of people do things to get money into their own pockets. So there's always a little bit of stealing wherever they can, doing things under the table. So it's never as straightforward as it should be.
Mm-hmm. When was the last time you went there? Or when was the last time you were in your country?
I went to visit once, and that would have been almost, I would say, about 9 years ago.
Do you know if a lot has changed since you've come to the States?
So I have, yeah, a lot has changed. There's been a lot more Venezuelans because of the way that Venezuela is these days. A lot of people try to run away, and the closest place that they can go is Trinidad. So I've heard that there are a lot more Venezuelans. They have built up even more. There are a lot more buildings and restaurants, a lot more American influence. I mean, we always had American influence, but I think it's even more now. And, of course, social media and all that doesn't, really help the situation. So, whatever people see is, what they're going to follow, what they see on TV and social media and stuff like that. Because we do get a lot of American television.
So because you said that there's a lot more of an American influence there, what do you think the perception is of America? Like in your country, what do people think about America?
I think that they think it's a great country. I mean, obviously, there are some Trinidadians who are going to think that, because we follow the English school system, that sometimes we might be a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of education, especially when it comes to primary school and secondary school. Of course, when it comes to the higher education like universities, I think that maybe United States would have a heads up there, would have a little advantage because a lot of Trinidadians try to get into the US to go to university. Not saying that the university system is not good in Trinidad, but, there's a lot more that you can do in the States.
You talked about the education system. Like, what are the main differences that you see between the education system there and the one here?
We move a little bit faster. Children go to school and it's very schoolwork oriented, not so much the extracurriculars in the beginning. So you do math and English and science very young, and you start learning higher end things pretty quick. So you start to read by the time you're 5. You start writing. You start by 6, 7. You're full on writing cursive. Reading at a very high level.
Would you say that it's competitive as far as is there a lot of competition among students?
Yes, because in Trinidad, to get into secondary school from primary school, you have to do an exam. And that exam you do probably when you're about 10 or 11. And that exam determines what school you go to. So it's not like the US where the school you go to is determined by where you live. So it is basically on how well you do in this written exam. And this is going to place you in either a top school or not a very good school.
Is the education system there free? I should say before. So obviously I'm not talking about college, but before college, is it free to go to school there?
Yes and no. So basically, yes, there's a lot of free schools. And then they have the private schools, which you pay for. And obviously, the private schools are going to be what they consider the better schools.
When students take these tests to get into secondary school, are they taking tests to get into public schools?
Yeah. So the schools that you get into are public schools. So at the secondary level, these schools are free. So even though you're paying for the primary level schools, when you do these exams, you're doing these exams to get into public schools, but they are of different levels. Mm-hmm. And they have some schools that are extraordinary. And then they have some schools that are I guess you would consider not as good. So you want to do the best you can in that exam, which is a huge pressure for a 10 or 11-year-old, that their whole life is what school they're going to go to, what type of education they get is based on an exam that you do at 10 or 11.
That is stressful. I mean, I have my son is 8 years old, and geesh, I just think 2 years from now, I still think of him as still being not a baby, but I still view him as a kid. And I can't imagine in just 2 years that he would be well, I got to figure out where I'm going to go to college and what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as a child, you're not thinking like that. You're just thinking, I want to get into this school. This school is the school that I dream of. This is the school that I really want to go to because I know that it's a great education. My parents want me to go there. My grandparents want me to go there. And basically, you try so hard because obviously every school only has so many spots.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody could be ranking that. So, some of the top schools each child has to rank the schools that they want to go to, their preference, first, second, third. And everybody wants to say that, hey, I passed for my first choice, and it's just a huge accomplishment that, your whole family, everybody is like, yay, you got your first choice. So it is a big, big thing over there.
A lot of pressure on a 10-year-old, I would have to say. So growing up, did you think that you would be living in the U.S.? Like, was that something that you thought, yeah, I'd like to make it there one day?
I honestly wouldn't have minded, but I can't say I really thought of it, nor did I think that I would. I mean, most people, when they reach to the United States, especially at a young age, it's probably because you went to school there. So after secondary school, you got into college in the United States. So that's basically how it goes. And then from there, sometimes you then got a job and somehow you got sponsored and got a green card. And that's how most people, when they're young, that's how they see the path. Or unless for some reason you meet an American and you get married and you move to the States. Like, those are the main ways you would think of. And none of that was in the books for me because I did go to university in Trinidad. So I really didn't think that I was going to live in the States.
What do you think you'd still be doing if you lived in Trinidad now?
Well, I'd probably be working and just raising a family in Trinidad. And I would be pretty close to my family and my friends. So I would probably have a lot of help. Mm-hmm. All my friends are still there. So I would have a pretty good group over there.
What would you say that you miss the most about home?
Friends and family.
Yeah.
Number one. I mean, number two would always be food because we have the best food. Because it's such a melting pot. Everything is just so different and so delicious. So a typical Chinese food dish is different in Trinidad because they have the different seasonings that everybody somehow threw in that just made it different than an original Chinese dish or Indian dish because somewhere along the line, the different cultures added their little spin on it, and then it just made it a Trini dish.
Yeah. What's your favorite dish there that they don't have here, that we don't have here?
I would say curry. And I say that because the Trinidad curry is different than you can get in India, in the US, in England, anywhere. We have our own spices. We make our own Indian spices. So it's pretty different.
That sounds delicious. I love curry.
Yeah.
Obviously, you never thought it wasn't really in the cards for you necessarily growing up that you were going to come to the US. It wasn't like something that you thought about really growing up. And you really did grow up in Trinidad and spent part of your adult life there until you came here in 2010. So what brought you to the United States?
My husband. So my husband is Trinidadian, but he wanted to do his surgical residency in the States. So that's how I ended up here, because he got through to do his surgical residency up here.
So tell me, what kind of medicine does your husband practice?
He is a plastic reconstructive surgeon.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So I'm sure he tells you all about work sometimes and the types of crazy surgeries he does. So tell me one surgery that he's told you about that you were either shocked or amazed by.
So, when people hear plastic surgeon, they think of cosmetic. My husband doesn't do cosmetic, so he does a lot of trauma patients. He basically wants to do a lot of cancer reconstructive surgeries. Just last week, I saw someone, well, I didn't see it, but he talked about someone whose hand basically got sliced in half. I know that sounds crazy. It was hanging on literally by a thread.
Oh my gosh.
He had to put that back together.
Wow.
And then he also specialized in microsurgery. So, it's getting all these little nerves back together, sometimes taking flaps from other parts of the body and putting it to fix whatever happened to the person in the first place. So it's really intricate, and these surgeries can be really long sometimes. It can be most of the day. So, yeah.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. Sounds very, very complex and probably not for somebody with a weak stomach.
Yes, I couldn't do it, that's for sure.
Yeah, that sounds pretty crazy. So when you got married, was it a conversation that he had with you pretty soon after that he planned to come to the United States?
While we were dating. So when we were dating, and we never really talked about it so much. I would say when we got engaged, he decided that he was going to do his exams to do surgical residency here. Now, it was a long shot. It was a long shot to get here, especially with the type of competition that it is to get into surgery in the States for a foreigner. And you had to do real well, like incredibly well on your board exams to get into surgical residency, because it is such a competitive program. So it's not like other aspects of medicine that might be a little bit easier. So, we talked about it, but I guess somehow it was kind of like a pipe dream, because we didn't know that we could actually get through.
Mm-hmm.
But he took it seriously, and he studied for those exams like he basically made that his second job. He was working, but after work, basically the entire afternoon, the entire night would just be studying for these medical board exams.
So it sounds like for him, it was always his plan, essentially, to want to eventually come to the US and practice medicine here.
Well, what happened was in Trinidad, you could have gone to England. You could have gone to, from what I understood, you could have gone there. And the medical school program was affiliated with the program over there. But then somehow they lost the affiliation. So that was no longer an option if you wanted to do any sort of specialty. So when that was taken away, the only other option was maybe to get into somewhere in Australia, Canada, US. And honestly, US was probably the easiest option to get into, even though it is still quite difficult.
Why is that, do you think?
Why is it difficult?
Like, why wasn't the US the first option other than the other countries like Canada and Australia?
Because Canada, they have, from what I understood, a much harder route to get into to do medicine than the United States. So I'm not saying to get into Canada for other purposes, but this is dealing with the medical route.
So all of the procedures and processes involved with somebody going to Canada.
Yeah. And again, he knows these processes more than I do, because he have dealt with it. He's dealt with it for many years and did all his research. And he's probably done this research, before I was in the picture.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say that it's that he didn't want, ultimately, that he knew that if he wanted to advance his career, that staying in Trinidad probably wasn't going to be an option?
Correct.
And why is that?
Because we don't have the training programs that the United States has. So there was no way he can have the training that he has here over there. We don't have the facilities. We don't have the equipment. We don't have the teachers that there is here.
So I know he worked very hard with studying, and I think it just goes to show that when you put your mind to something and you really want it bad enough, you figure it out somehow, and it ends up working out. The universe just plays into it, and you just end up, I think, really getting what you want if you put your mind to it. Do you remember the moment of when he said, "I made it, we are going to the US"?
Yes, it was his birthday. And we knew that the match was coming out. that day, the match to say if you got, they call it the match because it's a match program to see if you got matched to a program that you interviewed for, and that if it was on your ranking list. And we didn't have a whole lot of options. He basically only put one place on his match list, which is unheard of. People put multiple places on their match list because they interviewed quite a bit of places and they had their options. Again, because we are foreigners, we didn't have as many interviews as probably someone living here in the States would have. So he did go on a couple interviews, but he was not a fan of some of the programs in terms of the location and where he wanted to be and bring me and raise a family. So there was one place that he loved and that he loved the program and the people there. And he basically matched that first, second, third choice. He just put one program in.
Wow. That's awesome though, that
Yeah.
he put one choice down and that's what he got. So that's pretty cool. So that day, going back to that day when he said, I made it, we're going to the United States, what kind of emotions were you feeling?
I was happy. I was really happy for him because it was such a huge accomplishment. Like, we didn't think that could happen. And I was a little nervous. I knew I had a lot of stuff to do to just pick up and move and go to a whole other country that I am not used to. But yeah, I was young. We had no kids. It was just two of us. So even though I was nervous, I was a little excited too. It was just, an adventure.
What were you most nervous about?
I think just being somewhere new and different, somewhere that I was not familiar with, basically being alone because I have no family, I'll have no friends. And he would basically be working these crazy long hours with training and it would just be me. I always had my family close by that, if anything would happen, I can just call. But I basically will have to rely on myself a lot.
What were you most excited about?
Exploring somewhere new and different. I think that's probably what I was excited about. I was excited about honestly being somewhere where I could feel safe because Trinidad, even though it's a fantastic place, the crime was getting really bad. You couldn't go, you couldn't just go in your car and drive at night without feeling pretty nervous and looking over your shoulder a lot of times. So yeah, I was just looking forward to being able to just go and come a little more freely and not having to worry so much about somebody trying to hurt me.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think one of the basic human needs or necessities is just having a sense of security. So obviously coming to the States, there was immigration involved, all of the processes that go along with that. What has the immigration process been like for you?
Long. Hard.
Yeah. Tell me about the different emotions that have been feeling throughout the whole immigration process.
I guess sometimes you feel like you're not enough sometimes because they make it so hard for foreigners. And you often wonder why, because, I'm doing everything by the book. I pay taxes, we're here, we're smart, intellectual people. We're not a burden to the economy. If anything, we're helping. It was just a long, difficult process, and it's been a lot of work.
I know what you're trying to say in that, you're following all of the proper procedures to go through all of the immigration stuff, but it still seems like there's hurdles that you keep running into, and you wonder why is this so difficult? And I think the perception that some people have is, well, people just need to get in line, or can't someone just apply for a green card right away? And that's incorrect because it's different. I mean, there's so many different immigration processes and there's so many different things that somebody has to do before they can just
automatically apply for citizenship or automatically apply for a green card. And so when people say that it's an easy process, they have to realize that it's not. But yes, at the same time, I think it takes a lot of patience and it can be very stressful. I know that just dealing with clients and they're always like, well, how long is this going to take? Or any news? And in some ways, our hands are really tied because we have to wait for the government to give us a response. And I can see that it's frustrating on your end where you're like, hey, we're doing everything by the books. We're contributing to the community. And it still feels like hard.
People say it's a lot, they know it's a lot of paperwork. You're going to have to do a lot of paperwork, but we have thousands of papers and documents. And I mean, that we have had to submit and deal with. People just think it's like, a little folder. No, we have binders and binders of these things that we have had to do.
I think ultimately, because I know a little bit about the process that you guys are going through, I do think ultimately it will be successful. And then in hindsight, you can
relax a little.
Yeah. I think ultimately you will be able to relax a little. And I think that's just ultimately, that's what it is. Like I said, I get a lot of clients that get really anxious about the process. And it's just know that as long as you're following all of the proper procedures and processes and that you qualify for the benefit that you're applying for, it will happen. It's just, it will take some time. But I do believe that ultimately you'll get what you guys are applying for and it should all be good. I really do believe that.
I know. It's just the timing, sometimes because especially these days with COVID, everything, as you know, has now extended time periods. So things that should have taken a month or two could probably take a year now, or more.
Yeah, I know. It's definitely a weird time and it's pretty much everybody. It has been affected some way or another by COVID. And obviously immigration is no exception. And yeah, I always tell people, just be patient, even though it's so hard to be patient when it feels like in some ways your life is in the hands, like that you don't have any control right now. Yeah. And so, yeah, I know that can be hard. But like I said, I do believe that ultimately you guys will be just fine.
Yep. I look forward to that day.
So before you moved here permanently, had you visited the U.S. before?
Yes.
Okay.
So Trinidad is pretty close to Florida. It's a 3-hour plane ride. Growing up, I would probably say that I would travel once or twice a year to Florida, especially because it was so close and, it wasn't that expensive to get to. A lot of people would go there to shop a lot of times because, especially growing up, we didn't have the variety of things that you can get here. So a lot of times it was a huge thing that, people would go on vacation to Florida. Obviously, you go and you visit probably Disney World or, you just go and see some of the sites. But a lot of times people would just come up to shop. And because it was so close, a lot of Caribbean people lived in Florida. So there was always friends and family here to visit. So I did come to the States. I have been to Florida, New York, and I have visited other places before I actually moved here. So I think it was mainly Florida, New York, and then Texas right before we figured out that we were going to live here.
So what's your favorite thing about America?
I would say freedom, feeling safe, opportunity, the ease of which you can get things, just going to the grocery store, honestly. Going to a store, anything is just so much easier. The variety, the prices, it's just amazing. It's not what I'm used to growing up. We had limited, and whatever there was, it was always incredibly expensive. Very, very expensive. Not because we had to import so many things from the States. By the time you brought it down and you added all the taxes and the duties, it was exorbitant.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times with island countries, things are just a lot more expensive because so many things have to get imported in. So you mentioned that you have a child, and obviously her upbringing and your upbringing have probably been very different.
So different. She's never even, she has never seen a Caribbean beach. She didn't see a beach until, she was probably about 4, and I was in California. I mean, very different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are the opportunities that you're most excited about that your child will have because she grew up in the States versus the opportunities you had growing up in Trinidad and Tobago?
She will have a lot more variety of professions that she can just start studying, that she can look forward to exploring. We didn't have the type of, let's say, if you wanted to do the entertainment industry, you wanted to be an actor or a singer, it was just on a much smaller scale, and it would just be for just Trinidad or maybe the Caribbean, and that was it. So if she wanted to do something like that, if she wanted to do any sort of medicine, she would have access to study that here. If she wanted to do any sort of engineering or anything like that, she, again, would have a lot more access to that here, and much, much easier, because a lot of the things that if you were to try to do that in Trinidad, you would probably be aiming to try to get through to come up to the States to study it. And obviously it would be a long road, and it would be incredibly expensive to do it.
Yeah, and I hear that a lot from a lot of the other families I work with or just other immigrants, and they always talk about how much more opportunity there is in the States. And I think that was the same with my parents, and why they ultimately decided to come here too is they wanted their kids to have a better life. They wanted more opportunities, because I know that if we were still back in Vietnam, I don't think I would be where I am now if we were still in Vietnam, because my parents grew up very differently. They grew up in big families, didn't have a lot of money. And so I just know that I wouldn't have had access to all of the different education opportunities that I have here.
Yeah. If sometimes living in these small islands, you get contented with what is there, and you don't see what is outside of your little bubble. And you see your friends and you see your family, and you just get content, you get complacent with things that shouldn't be. Life becomes, oh well, if I try to work hard for something, it might be taken or something like that. It's just a way of thinking that you get complacent, not really thinking that outside of that there's so much better, that you don't have to worry about these things elsewhere.
Yeah. So last question I have for you is, what is one thing that you could take from your country and bring it here? It could be it could be food, a type of food. It could be like a cultural value, anything like that you could bring here and share with people.
I would bring, I mean, the food is fantastic. I would bring the way that we look at each other, the way we are as a country together. We celebrate everything as one. So even though we have so many religions, so we celebrate, the whole country will celebrate Diwali, which or celebrate Eid. We will all celebrate every single culture's religion together. So even a Catholic person will put on a sari and will light diyas when it is Diwali, even though we're not Hindu. Everybody just celebrates everybody's religion as one.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's something that I think we could all use right now with how things are. That's really cool. I really love that. That would be an awesome thing to have in this country too. Well, thank you so much for sharing about your life. And I think that a lot of people have learned things that we didn't really know much about, especially about Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, you really don't meet a lot of, well, I have never met anybody from that country before. And I would presume that a lot of people in the States probably haven't, unless maybe you're in like Florida, and you're in certain pocket areas in the States that have a lot of Caribbean immigrants. But I think most people probably don't know much about it. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thanks. Anytime.
Thank you so much, Tracey.